wouldn't it be nice to have several thought leaders in your industry know and love your brand? Start a podcast. Invite your industry's thought leaders to be guests on your show, and start reaping the benefits of having a network full of industry influencers. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. This episode is sponsored by Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. Today we are joined by Chip Rodgers. Chip is the VP of Marketing at WorkSpan, and he's also the new host of the Alliance Aces podcast. Chip, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jonathan. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's fantastic to have you on the show today. We're going to be talking about the growth of alliances and the need for automation. But before we get into today's topic, maybe you can tell our listeners a little about what you and the WorkSpan team are up to these days.
Sure, Jonathan. Hey, thanks for having me on. This is really, really exciting. I'm happy to get a chance to talk to your audience. So, WorkSpan is the go-to-market alliance, go-to-market network for alliances, and we are really all about strategic alliances and helping the whole profession of alliances really to get one of the challenges that we've seen is that alliances are not been underserved in a way, and there really is no automation for it. There are a lot of portals and different things, but there's nothing that's been designed for alliances. And so WorkSpan was started about 3 years ago and really focused completely on strategic alliances, and so that's what we're all about, and I'm excited to be a part of the team.
Perfect. Well, obviously, you feel very strongly about this idea of alliances. So maybe kind of just to get things started with this episode today, when we're talking about the growth of alliances, the need for automation, how would you define alliances and ecosystems?
Great question. Good place to start. Alliances are really the places where companies are going to market together, and you see them, every day there are new alliances being announced, and it's things like Lyft working with healthcare providers so that doctors, when they want to have a patient come in, that the Lyft trip, having them come in to the healthcare provider is paid for through that process, or it's just many numbers of alliances being announced all the time, and yet you have alliances being announced regularly, but it's tough to get it to go really past the press release stage. So there's a big announcement. You have maybe some executives on stage shaking hands and smiling, and then okay, now what do we actually do, and how does it actually work, and how do we get our organizations, large organizations, to work together to make this alliance work and operationalize it. And that's really where a lot of times the challenge is. And we've found that, and research has shown that even though, revenue, about 30 to 40% of a typical, technology company, high-tech companies in the high-tech field, 30 to 40% of revenue is driven through alliances. And yet, literally 60 to 70% of alliances that are announced have never go anywhere. They fail within the first year. That's horrible. That's a terrible statistic. So we're really trying to help solve that problem.
Yeah. Well, and 30 to 40%. I mean, that is a staggering number. Just hearing you talk through it, obviously it can be, achieving that level of coordination can be difficult. You've got two completely separate teams, both kind of with their own agenda. There is definitely a way in which they can help each other, but achieving that balance, achieving that coordination, achieving that communication is definitely sounds like the tricky part of the process. So You sort of alluded to, why these sorts of alliances are growing. But was there anything that you hadn't mentioned about sort of like why this is a trend, why this is happening?
Well, the market has changed, right? It's very competitive, and companies are looking for opportunities to work together, and they have to be responsive and agile. So, it used to be that if you needed some technology or wanted to go into a new market, you just buy the company. And that still happens today. But more and more companies are, rather than making that capital investment, they're saying, look, if we can work with someone that gets us into this new market and we work well together, then it's a win-win for everybody. All of a sudden, you open up the new market. You have expertise on both sides that can work together. And yet you're flexible. Like you can spin up an alliance relatively quickly. And if the market changes, you can sort of shift your investment into a different area. If you've done the acquisition, then it's, you're sort of, it's now you're stuck.
You're sort of locked in. Yeah.
You're locked in. Exactly. So as the market gets more competitive, and then there are technology, trends that have enabled this more. If you think of just, we call it the alliance economy, actually, where, you've got technology you're able to connect things more closely with APIs. You can have, if you think of companies, the way that companies are formed, it's much easier to start a company and bring in, rather than having to create, make all these capital investments and create all of these functions. You can actually use a Zenefits for HR, a Build.com for payments, Tally for expense reimbursement. You sort of have these capabilities to bring all these functions together, and yet they work well together pretty seamlessly because of everything's in the cloud. You connect them up with APIs, published APIs, and off you go.
Yeah. Now, for any of our listeners that are thinking strategically about different alliances that may benefit them and their company, what sort of challenges should they be on the lookout for?
One of the challenges is that it's a unique process. So you as you're going to market with a partner, you need to think about it as a business process. So you have these, you're going to go create a solution together. Then you're going to go, set up some marketing programs and execute on those marketing programs. And then you need to align your sales teams across companies and execute on joint opportunities and make sure that all of this works seamlessly, right? And yet it's business processes, but it's across company boundaries. You may have 2 companies or 3 companies or 4 companies working together, and that's a unique problem. It's not something that we've really solved for before. There are great functional systems. 20 years ago, for example, we solved the problem of Salesforce automation, and Salesforces have, and sales leaders have great information about where they stand, what the pipeline looks like, and all that. Over the last 10 years, marketing automation has just taken off, and we have very specific, marketing processes, reporting and analytics to know exactly where you stand in terms of, leads coming in and the marketing funnel. In alliances, there's nothing that, we haven't really automated that process. There's nothing there that does both business process, but across company boundaries. And so that's a really tough problem to solve.
It's story time, and this growth story is about eSub, a project management SaaS company specifically for subcontractors. Even though they had incredible customer retention, they struggled with growth. Being a niche service, they discovered that there was little demand expressed for their solutions within search engines. To take on this challenge, eSub hired Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. After refining, targeting, pre-qualifying clicks within ad copy, and developing custom landing pages, Directive was able to increase eSub's marketing qualified leads by 71%, while decreasing their cost per lead by 65%. I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to the show.
Now, one of the first things that, I'm sure people will be looking to accomplish and certainly looking to measure is just kind of what kind of revenue can come out of a strategic alliance. But, are there some other goals that executives should typically have? Are there some other things that they should be thinking about when measuring?
Great question. And certainly, revenue is always the North Star. That you want to make sure that you're both getting, incremental, revenue out of working together. So that's the top goal that you're always looking at. But there are a lot of interim goals, and they are some of the same goals that you might have with your sales team or your marketing teams. How many leads were generated, how many activities came out of it, what's your overall pipeline look like, marketing generated opportunities, marketing touched pipeline, and then, where things stand in the sales process. What stage are your different opportunities at? How long are they staying within different stages, and are they progressing? So those are all the kinds of things that you need to and want to measure with alliances. But it's tough because, again, it's you've got to pull. Each of the companies that are part of the alliance are running their own systems. You may have one of the participants in the alliance that's running Marketo, and another is using Eloqua, and another is using HubSpot. How do you pull all those things together from a marketing standpoint? Same thing with sales. You might have, one is using Salesforce, the other is using SAP CRM, another is using Microsoft Dynamics. How do you pull those things together? All of those core systems are phenomenal, and they do a fantastic job, but they're all really focused on how that individual company, how to automate the processes within that company.
So why is the alliances profession sort of underserved at this point, in your opinion?
It's a good question. It's hard to figure out, actually. We speak to alliances professionals all the time, and they are, and actually, I ran alliances at SAP for a couple of years early in my career. And it's tough. It's a tough job because you're quarterbacking not only folks within your company, but you also have to reach out and connect to all the right people in the other in your alliance companies. And I think the reason they've been underserved is there's sort of been this illusion like, hey, we have a partner portal, we're fine. And partner portals are great. PRM systems are great. They have really focused on the high volume, VAR relationships where you have, a lot of smaller partners that are, they log into a portal, they download marketing materials, they may register a deal, and then, they're off and running. But when you have a peer relationship of strategic alliances, it breaks down. It's not something that alliance professionals actually use. They don't use a portal because they're working together, and they're, creating a joint solution. They're running joint marketing programs. And today, like, 10 years ago, they're still being run with literally spreadsheets, emails, conference calls, and you go through the process, for a QBR. It's miserable. I mean, I've talked to some of our customers that said, it's a week or 2 weeks just to pull together a QBR because you're sort of reaching out to everybody and trying to figure out, okay, well, did this program actually happen? And where does this deal stand? And, how much is this for? When's it going to close? What stage is it at? And it's a little bit of a crazy town to try and get together. And then, then you in between, as soon as you've pulled all that information together, it's out of date, right? So,
Well, so, okay, if that's kind of where the alliances profession is now and the types of hangups and holdups that they're dealing with currently, where would you say then the industry is heading?
Well, we feel that this is, alliances, the time has come for alliance automation. And we're seeing some research coming out from some analyst firms that have identified this trend and saying, gosh, we really need to, it's an area that we haven't focused on, and we really need to go, have some smart people come together and figure out how to help these underserved alliance professionals and really put some automation in place and help elevate the profession, actually. And we say, there's chief revenue officer, there's a chief marketing officer. Why isn't there a chief partner officer today? And there really should, especially with 30 to 40% of revenue coming from partners. It's like, this should be a board level, role that's really driving the business. So,
well, and I mean, speaking of, elevating the position, forward thinking, one of the things that we've been asking our guests in 2018, especially, that we have on the show, is we want to find out kind of what kind of legacy are you hoping to leave behind at the end of the day, whether that is personal or professional or even a combination of the two.
Well, gosh, that's a good question, Jonathan. I would say one of the things that, as a former alliance professional myself, I really would love to really elevate the profession. And I feel like it's such a tough job, and alliance professionals are doing such amazing work, and not getting recognized the way that we think that they should be. So, if I'd be able to make that, transition and get to the point where, alliances is recognized and really helping drive revenue even more. I mean, 30 to 40% is, gosh, it could, if you really have figured out this process and put something in place that helps operationalize these processes, it can grow significantly. So that would be what I would say. And some of the things that we're doing at WorkSpan are hopefully trying to do that. We're pulling together a community of alliance professionals, and we really want to have a place for them to talk about best practices and, talk about challenges that they're having and get help from each other and really make this profession grow and get recognized.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and not just a community with WorkSpan, but certainly you've got a brand new podcast coming out. We're obviously a little bit biased. We're helping you produce the Alliance Aces podcast. You're going to be the host of the show. What can listeners expect to hear? Sort of, if and when they start tuning into that new show.
Yeah, we're going to be launching it next week. We're very excited about it. And what are you going to hear? I've already recorded 6 of the podcasts, and they're just great conversations to hear about, talking to alliance professionals, to hear about, the challenges that they're having, some of the things that they've been able to do to really be successful and grow their alliances. And so those are the things that we're going to be talking about. What's working, what's not working, and how to really grow the profession and make alliances successful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, we're definitely going to have a link to the show. Again, we've been talking to Chip Rodgers, the VP of Marketing at WorkSpan. Chip, I think that our listeners are going to get a lot out of today's content. I know I'm constantly learning by getting to host this show. So if anyone in our audience is interested in finding out a little bit more about today's episode, finding out more about WorkSpan, finding out about the Alliance Aces podcast, or just even connecting with you, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Oh, great question, Jonathan. A lot of ways, actually. First of all, to get to WorkSpan, it's just www.workspan.com. For me, you can email me actually at chip@workspan.com. And then I'm also on just about all social media at Chip Rodgers. So Twitter is at Chip Rodgers, and LinkedIn is /in/Chip Rodgers, and so pretty easy to find me.
Thank you again so much for your time and your expertise today.
Jonathan, thank you for your time as well, and really appreciate being on the show.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.